I think it's a matter of just technological maturity. So I'll walk through it again through a slightly different lens. When I started college back in the early 2000s, I'm sort of doing that side of things. So then very much, you're building things that were tools still. You're writing command line programs that process files and whatever else that they're doing. And then eventually they sort of said, well, maybe there's this thing called databases and maybe we should teach you about servers. And you did that. And it was still sort of back endy. But nobody talked about front end, right? Because front end, who does that? It's like those fake people who do that, right? And eventually that evolved because that became the norm and that stopped being the new technology that people didn't understand. And it became the new technology that people did understand. And it became part of the overall toolbox that you had to know about. And yes, you were expected to be building front end UIs of some sort for your projects and for your things. And that sort of evolved. And I think that's just going to become the general part of the ecosystem. Now, I think as a human brain, we can only hold so much information. So 30 years ago, if you graduate from college, you were expected to be able to go down to the assembly level and know the assembly level and be able to understand how, the differences between CPU architectures. Nobody cares about that today. It's irrelevant, right? Like we've shipped that out. Yes, there are people who do that niche, but we've essentially moved the stack up. So now you got to know your databases, you got to know sort of your server side and your front end, right? And then I think at some point it's going to move up as well. At some point, we're going to take things like databases and we're going to just say, hey, there's some storage thing back over there. You put the data in there, it sort of works. And when it doesn't, you pick up the phone and you call the database specialist, quote unquote, right? And so we move sort of more front end. At the end of the day, I think the biggest shift is that we realize that we have to empower engineers to be product owners and to be business owners, much more so than I think we used to. And I think we used to be much more like, hey, you're an engineer. Here's your tiny little bug that you're working on. You're sort of in this sliver. Focus there and don't stray too much out of your guardrails. You go sit in your basement. And we've become much more like, hey, these engineers are pretty smart. We're paying them a lot of money. They have good intuition. Let's give them the ability to execute and figure out what needs to happen. And I think that's what we've come to. And I think it's just going to get more like that. And I think, my personal opinion is that over time, software engineers are going to become much more business minded. They're going to have a lot more business acumen and say in product direction and in revenue direction and in where things are, customers are headed. And they're going to have this slightly new breed of software engineers who are like, we really should be launching feature X because we think that's going to make us more money than feature Y that we're losing money on. So I think that's going to become much more of a thing than what we have now.